Hi, I'm Christine Cushing, and welcome to another helping of my favorite foods. Today, 2 words, cinnamon buns. That's it. I'm crazy about cinnamon buns. I want to share with you my favorite way of making it. Lots of great tips and tricks. 3 parts to this. First, we're gonna make a dough, then we're gonna roll them out, put the filling, the cinnamon, and lastly, we're gonna glaze them. First step is the dough, that beautiful tender dough. I have one really cool trick on how to get that dough tender. I'm gonna divulge it as we go. Patience is good in the kitchen. So I like using the stand mixer with a dough hook. The first thing I wanna do is in my stand mixer combine some wet and sweet ingredients. 1/4 cup of sugar, so very little sugar in this. To that, some melted butter that's been cooled, 1 whole egg, and a little vanilla. I'm just adding a little bit of that in. Some warm milk. This is just to keep the yeast at the right temperature. I'm just gonna whisk this together. It's gonna go into my stand mixer. All the wet ingredients with the fat and the sugar are in there now. You wanna keep the salt and the yeast apart. So what I do is put the salt in with the wet ingredients, and then I'm gonna put the yeast in with the flour. And here I'm using an instant yeast. Stirring that up just to blend it completely. Let me share with you the secret ingredient, mashed potatoes. The potato really makes it nice and tender, so it gives it that fluffiness. I bake them, making some holes in them, cool it down slightly, and then peel them when they're still warm. And then you gotta have this little milk or a ricer. These are 2 medium potatoes. Make sure it's cooled. To add everything in, I always put my flour on a piece of parchment paper. Let's make some buns. On medium speed, I add the mashed potatoes to the wet ingredients, then the flour with the yeast. At about the 5-minute mark, you're gonna see it's gonna come together, pull away from the sides. See, it's a little bit sticky still. Now comes the bench flour. And you can see it's still sticking to my hands, but it's not super sticky. So I'm just gonna do the last bit of kneading here. This is probably the trickiest bit of baking, is knowing when is the dough properly kneaded. Looking for a little bit tacky on the fingers, but not super, super wet. And it's gotta be satiny, so smooth. This will probably take a couple more minutes, but don't rush it. It feels so great. Those mashed potatoes, I'm telling you, smooth, just slightly sticky. Now, as with any yeast product, you gotta let it rise. So I'm gonna put a little butter. I'm gonna cover it with plastic. So when I cover this, I wanna make sure it's super sealed, and I leave it in a warm part of the kitchen. I even put a towel around it. 1.5 to an hour and 45, or until it's doubled in bulk. So 1 hour and 45 minutes later, come on, look at this dough. Oh, baby. That's doubled in bulk. Phase 2, which is the rolling it out and actually filling it with the cinnamon. So key here is to be prepared, right? I wanna have all my MEP, mise en place, what we call in the kitchen. All of these things chopped, ready, measured, so that when the dough's ready, your MEP is ready and you're not running around going, ah. And ultimately, I'm gonna make here 12 buns. For me, the optimal size is this rectangle right here. 15 wide by 10 high. I use a little bit of brown sugar. This is just organic dark brown sugar. It's gonna give me that beautiful caramely molasses flavor. And of course, the cinnamon. I'm also going in with some pecans. I like to drizzle it with a bit of melted butter just here so that this guy will stick on. So just like 2 tablespoons, about 25 grams of butter. Now I want to tuck it tightly, but gently, if that's possible. This dough feels so fantastic. You see how I'm sort of pulling it a little bit as I go? Look at that. This is gonna make 12, about 1.25 inches each. Just cut it in the middle, very gently sawing through. What I'm gonna do is just take a bit of flour, like that, and dust my knife. To keep it simple, you go in half again, and each half into 3. I like it in a baking dish because it kind of keeps them together and the moisture in, lined with a bit of parchment paper, and I'm gonna lay them down with some space in between. What's key to keep in mind here is that they don't all have to look perfect. They're gonna swell out and they're gonna just bundle all together. That's why I place them this way. And also as you roll it, the ends become a little bit thinner because this is a tender dough. So now it's proofing time. 45 minutes later, do you want to see how these look? These are doubled in bulk. Let me show you. Ta-da! Look at how fantastic they are. Now, last phase for the baking, 175 Celsius, 350 Fahrenheit for about 25 to 30 minutes. In they go. Now we can talk icing glaze. The question is, to glaze with my maple glaze or the cream cheese icing. For the glaze, I combine water, icing sugar, corn syrup, maple syrup, and cinnamon. Bring to a boil and reduce by half. This is my take on a classic cream cheese icing with way less sugar. I mix the cream cheese, about 4 ounces or 125 grams, on medium-high speed with some icing sugar, a splash of heavy cream, and maple syrup until super smooth, about 4 or 5 minutes. Okay, I think we are done. Here's the thing. The question is, to glaze with my maple glaze that I made and absolutely love, or cream cheese icing. Everybody has an opinion. Here in this house, we've been having basically a battle, my husband and I. He wanted the cream cheese, I want the maple glaze. I'm gonna cut this baby in half. Half are gonna have maple glaze, and the other half I'm gonna do with the cream cheese icing. So I want your input, you tell me which you like best. So while this is warm and these have cooled slightly, look at that. Okay, this is why I'm talking about the maple glaze. Look at them. Now to the other side, the cream cheese icing side. I put it into a little piping bag. Now, with this one, I'm gonna go totally rogue. Look at how perfect that is. And I'm gonna just slather it in the cream cheese. One for my husband with his mess o' cream cheese. Oh, the texture of these is so great. And my maple glazed, absolutely perfect texture cinnamon bun. Neither of these is crazy sweet. What I love about it is the maple really adds another dimension to it. You get the cinnamon, you get the maple. The potato really gives it a supple, very tender texture. You're the boss of your own kitchen. I want to know, which one would you pick? Would you go cream cheese, like my husband, or would you go maple glaze? I really want to know. Either one will be great. You're going to get recipes for both. Thank you for joining me on My Favorite Foods. See you next time. I am not going to eat all these. I'm just limited to one.